So good afternoon, everyone, and I would like to welcome you to the first AGePOP Open Research webinar. Before we start, I would like to present you a brief overview of our consortium. So AGePOP is an EU Marie Curie action, and the AGePOP stands for Drug Absorption in Geriatric Patients and Older People, a training network innovating drug development for the advanced age population. The objective of AGePOP is to generate for the first time information on the actual dosage form intake conditions for older people and geriatric patients and on physiological characteristics of their gastrointestinal tract relevant to oral drug absorption. AGePOP team consists of 3 academic institutions with research excellence in oral drug absorption and development. That's KU Leuven and the University of Greifswald and the National Kapodistrict University of Athens, and the 3 leading pharmaceutical companies, Bayer, Germany, Roche in Basel, and Merck in Germany. In addition, 8 partner organizations from 5 countries from 3 different sectors are participating in the AGePOP consortium. From clinical health sector, we have the Red Cross Hospital of Athens in Greece, and the university hospitals of the University of Leuven and the University of Greifswald. Also, we have leading pharmaceutical companies that help with us in order to host our early stage researchers for their secondments, and these are Janssen in Belgium, UCB in Belgium, AstraZeneca in UK, Novartis in Basel, AbbVie in Germany, and also we have an SME, and this SME is Accelopment and has expertise in ETN training programs, and these companies complete the AGePOP consortium. Also, we have 11 early stage researchers for 8 countries, and they are on board, and our aim is to provide them with the opportunity to become the first trained experts on oral drug delivery of drug products to older people and geriatric patients in Europe. 2 of our ESRs are going to present today their research in this first AGePOP webinar. AGePOP is funded from EU Horizon 2020 with 2.8 million euros and is a European training program under Marie Curie Actions. We started on January 2021, and for further information and updates, we invite you to visit our website and follow us in LinkedIn and Twitter. And starting our webinar, I would like to introduce you our moderator for today. And our moderator for today is Susanne Page. Susanne studied pharmacy at the Technical University Braunschweig. She did her diploma thesis at the UNPharm in the field of buccal delivery systems. In 2002, she completed her PhD thesis investigating a new film coater at the Martin Luther University of Halle in the working group of Professor Kleine-Bude. She joined Hoffmann La Roche in Basel in 2002 as a formulation scientist, and today she's an expert scientist with a strong focus on patient-centric aspects in drug product development and drug delivery technologies. She's interested in topics such as patient-centric dosage forms for specific populations and their development, but also in the development of poorly soluble compounds. Susanne is inventor and co-inventor of some formulation patents, co-author of scientific book chapters and journal articles. She has supervised several internship projects, diploma master theses, as well as PhD students, and in our consortium is work package leader, and also she's supervising a few of our ESRs. So, Susanne, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Maria, for the kind introduction. Before we start with the presentation and the introduction of our 2 ESRs, I would like to have a few things on housekeeping. So feel free throughout the entire session to already put your questions into the Q&A button. So we will then take them after the presentation of our two ESRs. So with this, I would like to introduce our two ESRs who will give the presentation today. The first one is Dorota Sarwinska. Dorota studied pharmacy at the Medical University of Gdańsk in Poland. She did an internships in analytical laboratories before she moved on with doing her master thesis in an Erasmus project together with the University of Greifswald. Within this master thesis, she worked already on patient-centric dosage forms. She prepared at that time mini tablets for pediatric use using hot melt extrusion and fuse deposition 3D printing methods. From July 2021 onwards, Dorota is part of our AGePOP consortium, and we will hear more from her. And the second student who will give a presentation today is actually Henriette Hummler. Henriette did her pharmacy study at the university in Freiburg in Germany. She did also during her study 1 year abroad at the University of Gothenburg in Sweden. During her pharmacist training, she did a research project which finally went into a diploma thesis. She worked here on drug delivery systems for doxorubicin, which was done also in collaboration with the University of Toronto in Canada. And actually, Henriette is the first ESR who joined AGePOP. She started in May 2021 in our company here in Basel, and she's doing her research together also with the University of Greifswald in Germany. With this, I hand over for the talk to Dorota, please.
Welcome everyone, also from my side. So the title of our webinar is Patient-centric drug development to ease medication management for older adults, closing current knowledge gaps. The outline of today's webinar is the following. So first, I will tell you about medication management in older adults, and then Henriette will tell you about swallowability and acceptability. But first, I will tell you about our population of interest, so older adults. By saying older adults, I mean people at age 65 and older. Due to aging, many changes in the whole organism appear. And the general health start to deteriorate. And aging affects every system of the body, and from the AGePOP point of view, the most interesting for us is gastrointestinal tract. Older adults are very heterogeneous population, and we cannot divide them based only on their chronological age. We should rather focus on their biological age. So some people at the age of 67, let's say, they are already sick and frail, and while others at the age, let's say 90, they can be still fit and healthy. And what does frail mean? Frailty is an aging-related syndrome of physiological decline in function. The symptoms of frailty include higher risk of falling, weakness, incontinence, and higher susceptibility for side effects while using medications. The most common problems that hinder everyday life of older adults are visual impairments, impaired hearing, cognitive disorders including dementia, dexterity issues, and swallowing difficulties including dysphagia. I will tell you more about these problems later in this presentation. Due to general health deterioration, older adults develop many diseases. Multiple, so 2 or more coexisting chronic diseases is called multimorbidity. Due to many diseases, also older adults often use many medications. Usage of 5 or more medications is called polypharmacy. And when someone takes 10 and more medications, in this case is hyperpolypharmacy or extensive polypharmacy. So many medications and all these health problems, it may lead to non-adherence. So the situation when patients stop to take their medications or to take it in different way. And to better understand this non-adherence, first we should better understand this special population. In our presentation, I will focus on medication management in older adults. Medication management is the process of safe, effective, and appropriate use of prescribed medications by patients. And during this process, many practical problems may appear, especially in this population. On this slide, you can see the steps in medication management process, which I will extend later in this presentation. This graph comes from the AGePOP review article and parameters to consider for successful medication use in older adults and AGePOP review. And this is 1 out of 3 AGePOP review which were written by AGePOP ESRs. On the right-hand side, you can see the QR code. So if you are interested to learn more about our review, you are free to scan it and read it. So the first step in medication management process is maintenance of medicine stock at home. There are different disorders in older adults that affect medication management in this step. And first, medications are prescribed by a physician. Patients often take many medications, and also often these medications are prescribed by different physicians. Given that often these physicians don't know about what other physicians prescribe, it can cause drug-drug interactions, side effects, and unnecessary costs for patients. At this point, it is also possible to avoid prescribing medications that may be difficult to deal with for the special populations, and to implement more patient-centric approach. Secondly, medications schedules are often complicated, especially when patients take many medications through the whole day, on different times of the day, or even on different days. Patients may want to ease the medication plan and take medication in their own way, or don't take it at all, so it will lead to non-adherence. Third, using of intake aids may increase the adherence, and this intake aids may be in the form of apps that remind about medication intake, or multi-compartment compliance aids, where patients have their medication for every time of the day or the different days. Another important point is drug storage. Medications should be stored in appropriate conditions, mostly in the temperature of 25 degrees, and some others should be stored in the fridge. Older adults often store their medications in the bathroom or in the kitchen. where the conditions may not be optimal for drug stability. As I mentioned before, older adults use multi-compartment compliance aids to increase the adherence, but on the other hand, medications then are stored not in the original container. Additionally, due to dexterity issues, people may not close the package. And in both cases, medication will be exposed to open dish conditions, what can affect the medication quality and may be harmful for patients. The second step in medication management is instruction for use, so information leaflet. It is generally known that many people don't read the information leaflet. Information leaflet can be difficult to read for older adults. So due to visual impairment, it can be difficult for them to read small font. Another point that language used in this leaflet may be too complicated for them and may contain specialist wording. Also, due to dexterity issues, it may be difficult for older adults to look for the interesting information in the small rolled up piece of paper. Another point is about described side effects, which can be disturbing for older adults, and they can stop taking medications or not even starting taking it. The third step in medication management process is handling of secondary and primary packaging. Older adults, while using their medications, they get used to the appearance of the package as well as the dosage form, like shape of color. Appearance of the medication is important for drug identification, and problems here may lead to intake of the wrong medication or incorrect intake. Due to dexterity issues, it can be also difficult for older adults to open the secondary package, like a container with a lid, or to take the tablet from the blister. Can be also difficult for them to grab small objects, like, for example, tablets. The fourth step is preparation prior to use. Two complexity factors, we include using of inhalers, splitting tablets, and liquid dosage forms. Using of inhalers can be difficult due to complex synchronization of breathing and pushing the tool. Splitting tablets can be difficult because of dexterity issues and visual impairments. It can be hard for older adults to divide tablets or to break it with their fingers, and often when they do this modification, the obtained parts, they are not equal, and there is also loss of the mass. When it comes to liquid dosage forms, they are also difficult to handle. It can be difficult to dose them on the spoon or to the dosing cup. The last but not least, drug intake. In this step, general physical features of the dosage form, like size and shape, are important. They directly affect the swallowability of dosage form, and it can cause problems. And this topic will be extended by Henriette in the second part. In drug process intake, also dosing conditions are important because they affect a dosage form. dosing conditions are important from oral drug administration point of view because they affect the behavior of the medication in the gastrointestinal tract. The most important factors that influence drug after oral administrations are type of amount of fluid co-administered with a medication, food intake, including vehicles, so soft foods which are administered with a medication to ease the medication swallowing, time of drug intake, and dosage form modifications. All these factors may change the drug absorption, so it can either increase it or decrease it. And in both cases, results may be dangerous for patients and can cause ineffective pharmacotherapy or side effects due to overdosing. During clinical development, food studies are performed, among others, using FDA protocol, which contain information about the whole dosing conditions, like time of drug intake and intake of meal. In these studies, FDA breakfast is used. It is a high caloric, high fat meal, which consists of eggs, toast with butter, hash browns, bacon, and milk. It is the extreme case scenario, which should cause the higher physiological response of the organism and should influence the drug form to the highest extent. We can assume that in a real life, people normally don't eat such a breakfast, and their drug intake process is quite variable, and it can be also different among people in different age or in different locations or countries. And the real-life dosing conditions in geriatric patients and older adults were investigated by me in the first part of my project. Collected data allow understanding better the real-life drug intake process of older adults and dosage form behavior in the gastrointestinal tract. The manuscript will soon be published. And yeah, now Henriette will take over and will tell you more about acceptability and swallowability. Thank you.
So hello everyone as well from my side. As Dorota was already talking about one step of medication management, which is the drug intake, I want to focus on this a bit more and talk about the swallowability, the influence of solid or dosage form characteristics on swallowability, visual perception, and handling. And so I will talk about the intervention study that we have performed, but first of all, I will introduce you to acceptability in older adults before then explaining you the purpose of our study, present you the study design before then coming to the study results, and finally concluding the presentation. And as a first teaser, we have already published the data of the intervention study, so also feel free to scan those QR codes and have a read there. So as we already heard, older adults are commonly confronted with polypharmacy, and therefore it is not surprising that older adults represent the main user group of medicines. And while we're talking about older adults, we have to take into account a high prevalence of swallowing difficulties. And reasons for those swallowing difficulties might range from a neuromuscular decline to an association with several diseases, or they might occur as a side effect of several drugs. And despite the benefit of successful pharmacotherapy, studies have shown that up to 50% of adults being affected by long-term illnesses do not take their medication as prescribed. And as life expectancy is increasing, it gets more important that those extra years are spent in good health. And therefore, we need to understand the characteristics, the abilities, but also the impairments of older adults in order to be able to develop patient-centric drug products. And patient acceptability was defined by EMA in their reflection paper on the pharmaceutical development of medicines for use in the older population as the ability and willingness of the patient to self-administer and also of any of his, her lay or professional caregivers to administer a medicinal product as intended. We can see that patient acceptability is influenced by factors of the target patient population, but also by characteristics of the envisaged dosage form. So there exists quite a number of influence factors on patient acceptability, and some of them are derived from the drug substance and are related to the envisaged drug product. So they include the route of administration, the type of dosage form, the appearance, the swallowability, palatability, the site of application or administration, but also patient perception, which is, for example, the anticipated swallowability, the recommended single dose, and any handling that needs to be conducted prior to use. And then other influence factors, they are more related to the drug management process. Those include the authorized shelf life, the recommended dosing frequency and the duration of the treatment, the need for caregiver assistance and the type of setting, as well as the complexity of the dosing instructions. And then there are some more influence factors which are more related to handling of packaging and handling of devices. In literature, it has been reported that the size and shape of solid oral dosage forms is influencing swallowability, patient perception, and any handling that needs to be conducted prior to use. And as we just heard, all of those three factors are at the end influence factors on patient acceptability. However, a knowledge gap has been reported on appropriate sizes and shapes for older adults. And therefore, we aim to answer the following question. What is an appropriate size and shape of solid oral dosage forms for older adults? And let me shortly explain why we decided to focus on solid oral dosage forms and how we decided on the design of the tested dosage forms. So we researched the 300 most prescribed drug products, which were prescribed by independent physicians to outpatients being 65 years or older. And all of those drug products were dispensed by public or hospital pharmacies to the account of statutory health insurances. And what we saw within those 300 most prescribed drug products was that 85% were intended for all use. And within those solid oral dosage forms then intended for all use, the tablets were the most dominant dosage form. And therefore we decided then to focus on tablets of varying shapes, being oblong, oval, and round. And also in terms of tablet weights, we took orientation on those 300 most prescribed drug products, but I will explain you later which weights we actually tested when introducing you to the different parts of our study. Our study included in total 3 different parts. So there was a deglutition part, a visual perception part, and a handling part. And we included older adults being 65 years or older, as well as a control group of younger adults being between 18 and 64 years. Within the deglutition part, we tested 8 different coded tablets. And as each participant only needed to swallow 4 different tablets, they were assigned to 2 subgroups. And independent of the subgroups, they all swallowed a 250, 500, 750, and 1000 milligram tablet, but then those tablets varied in their shape depending on the subgroup. And we applied partial or blinding to the study as we hid the tablet from participants' view within the lid of this Medibech, and therefore we were able to study the actual swallowing capabilities and were able to exclude any psychological bias due to visual perception. We always provided 100 ml of water for the participant to swallow the individual tablet. And after participants had swallowed the tablet or were not able to swallow the tablet, they were asked different questions. First of all, they should rate swallowability according to not, moderately, and well swallowable. And in case they stated poor swallowability, they were asked for reasons herefor. Further, they were then questioned about a foreign body sensation during the deglutition and about their willingness for a daily intake over different time periods, which were here 1 week or several months. And further evaluations within this study part were the time and the water volume they needed to swallow the individual tablets, as well as whether they showed any signs of aspiration during or after the deglutition. And we repeated this deglutition part with each participant on 3 study days. Within the visual perception part, we had 8 different showcases, and there were 2 types of showcases. First of all, there were shape showcases and also weight showcases. And what does it now mean, a shape or a weight showcase? So within the shape showcases, there were always tablets of the same shape, but then those tablets varied in their weight. And 1/4 shape showcase included capsules, but then those capsules varied in their size. And for the weight showcases, we had a 250, a 500, 750, and a 1,000 milligram weight showcase. And those showcases always included dosage forms of the same weight. And those were tablets of varying shape, as well as a capsule for the 250 and the 500 milligram weight showcase. And in case of the 750 and the 1,000 milligram weight showcase, those included mini tablets. And those showcases were shown one after each other to the study participant, and then each participant was always asked the same question: which of the dosage forms do you think are you able to swallow? And within the handling part, we tested 14 different tablets, and those tablets were placed one after each other in a randomized order on a table in front of the seated participant. And participants were then always asked to pick up the tablet from the table and to put them into a box, which was about 30 centimeters above table height. And thus we were able to mimic the way to the mouth. After they had handled the tablet or were not able to handle the individual tablet, they were asked different questions. Again, they should rate handling according to not, moderately, or well to handle. And in case of poor handling, they were asked for reasons. And further evaluations within this study part were then the time and the number of attempts they needed to handle the different tablets. In total, we included 52 participants within each age group, and older adults were inpatients at a geriatric ward in a German hospital, while the younger adults were recruited at the University of Greifswald here in Germany. And older adults did cover all age ranges above 65 years and older, and while younger adults did show a rather young mean age. And older adults did show the, let's say, typical profile of geriatric patients. So they besides of one older participants, they all were confronted with 2 or more chronic conditions, and 96% were confronted with polypharmacy, and even 52 with hyperpolypharmacy. So as Dorota said, they would need to cope with a regular intake of 10 or more medications. And the different medication burden between those 2 age groups is also underlined when we look at the median number of regular medications they were taking. Exclusion criteria for our study were the diagnosis of dementia as well as dysphagia, and therefore we were studying a certain subgroup of older adults, but I will elaborate on this further later on. So let us have a look at the study results. Here you see a summary of the ratings that each participant gave on the 3 study days for the individual tablets, and they are representing, let's say, the worst case. So this means only if a participant rated a tablet as well swallowable on all 3 study days, it is also shown here as well swallowable, and in case they rated a tablet on one of the 3 study days as moderately swallowable, it is categorized here as moderately swallowable. And of course, consequently, if they were not able to swallow the tablet on one of the 3 study days, the tablet is here categorized as not swallowable for this particular participant. And the red line is drawn at 80%, as this is reported to be a commonly used threshold for acceptability. And of course, our goal should be to reach the optimum of a well-swallowable tablet in 80% or more of participants, and thus in the end, patients. But if we look at the data, we see that this threshold was only reached by the 250 milligram oval-shaped tablet for older participants, and in case of younger participants, this applied for both 250 milligram tablets being of round or oval shape, as well as for the 500 milligram oval-shaped tablet. And of course, one might now argue, well, at least for a short-term treatment, one could maybe also consider moderately swallowable tablets. And if we have a look at the data on, from this point of view, we can see that actually all tablets were at least rated as moderately swallowable in 80% or more of cases, independent of the 2 age groups. And what we saw in terms of preferences of shapes was that there existed a trend towards the preference of tablets with a smaller minimum cross-sectional area. So this means a preference towards elongated compared to round shapes, especially when we then compare within or between tablets of the same weight. And we were now studying swallowability as an influence factor on acceptability, and therefore we were interested if and to what extent the swallowability was actually influencing the willingness of participants for a daily intake. And what we saw was that in case participants rated the tablets as well swallowable, they were also willing to take them on a daily basis over 1 week or several months. However, for an intake over a longer time period, this only held true then for tablets which did not exceed a weight of 250 milligrams, so it only applied for smaller sized tablets. And in case tablets were rated as moderately swallowable, this willingness was limited or even not given. And this points again to the importance of a well-swallowable dosage forms in order for patients to accept their medication and at the end be adherent to it. And Here I am presenting the data of the shape showcases from the visual perception part. And one obvious observation is that capsules were rated worse compared to tablets. This was visible within old as well as young participants. So their bigger size due to their lower density seemed to have a negative effect here on visual perception. And one further quite obvious observation is the difference between old and young participants. So while old participants already stated that they were not able to swallow smaller size tablets, those size limits were shifted to higher ends within young participants. And this preference of elongated compared to round shapes that I already mentioned for the deglutition part was also seen here within the visual perception part. So elongated shapes, the oval and the oblong shape were preferred compared to round shapes, and this preference was more pronounced as tablet weight was increasing. And when we are now comparing the data of the visual perception part, which is shown here as the shaded bars, to the swallowing capabilities tested in the deglutition part, we see a clear self-underestimation of participants. And this self-underestimation was even more pronounced within old participants compared to young participants. And this comparison further points out the influence of the usage of different methodological approaches and study designs when testing the swallowability of solid oral dosage forms swallowability. And further, it points out to the difficulty of comparing results from studies with using different methodological approaches or different study designs. But now I want to shortly move away from swallowability and focus on the handling. So 50% of our older participants did receive help in the medication management, at least to some extent. However, when we think about the medication intake, the last step, which is picking up the tablet from a table or out of a multi-compartment compliant aid, is normally done by older patients themselves. And what we saw was that only one of the older participants was actually not able to handle some of the tablets, but otherwise all tablets could be handled by participants independent of their age. And they even rated the tablets as well to handle. An exception hereof are the tablets with a weight of 125 milligram. They were, let's say, only rated as moderately to handle. But again, there is one exception, which is the round shape 125 milligram tablet, because this tablet was even rated as well to handle by old participants. And this points now to an interesting observation, which was that even though we would have expected that younger adults have less difficulties with handling the different tablets, their ratings were not distinctively better compared to those of older participants. And this strict assessment by young participants is then even more underlined when we look at the short time and the few attempts they actually needed to handle the different tablets. But what we see within young participants is that they clearly rated the smallest tablets worse, and handling got then better with increasing tablet size. However, no such clear trend could be seen within old participants. At the end, while looking at that data from this handling part, we would say that handling seems not to be the decisive aspect for the decision on an appropriate tablet size or shape. However, this might change when we would focus on another subgroup of patients. For example, thinking about arthritis patients who might have more limitations in terms of dexterity. For this patient subpopulation, maybe limits to bigger sizes of tablets might apply when focusing on the handling of those tablets. And this brings me, first of all, one important comparison that we made was between the appropriate tablet sizes that we found within our intervention study and compared those then to the characteristics of the 300 most prescribed drug products. And what we saw was that 43.6% of the oval-shaped tablets did exceed an appropriate length of 12 millimeters, and this at the end applied then to 10% of all tablets that were included in those 300 most prescribed drug products. And in respect to the visual perception, actually up to 44% of the oval and the oblong-shaped tablets did exceed appropriate lengths of 12 and 12.75 millimeters. And in case of round-shaped tablets, 16.7% did exceed an appropriate diameter of 9.3 millimeters. So in total, up to a quarter of all tablets that were included in those most prescribed drug products did exceed an appropriate length or diameter. And in terms of handling, we saw that 21.8% of the oval-shaped and 43.3% of the oblong-shaped tablets actually were smaller than the length that we found was appropriate for older adults. So in total, 10% of those most prescribed drug products, or the tablets included in those most prescribed drug products, might cause difficulties in handling. And now this brings me to the conclusion. So in respect to our study, we saw that swallowing capabilities were actually better than expected by participants. However, when developing patient-centric drug products for older adults, the lower size limit for a good swallowability, especially when thinking about long-term treatment, need to be considered. And as we have seen, there exist different influence factors on acceptability, and their influence need to be kind of weighted differently depending on the envisaged dosage form, and also when thinking about the varying characters of the target patient population. So in our opinion, there does not exist such thing as the one acceptable dosage form, neither for adults in general nor for older adults, as they are such a heterogeneous patient population. And one further important point that I want to make is that when we're talking about acceptability in older adults, we definitely have to take into account the context of polypharmacy. And this high burden of the regular intake of many medications might even apply a higher acceptability for each product as such. And with this, Dorota and me, we want to thank our academic supervisors, Professor Werner Weitschis and Professor Anne Seidlitz, as well as Susanne Page and Cordula Stillhardt at Roche. And further, we want to thank Professor Mike Golasch, who supported us in the conduct of the clinical studies. And of course, also thank you to the whole AGePOP consortium. But finally, thank you for your attention. And we're now here for a Q&A session, but also feel free to contact Dorota and me after the webinar. And with this, I'm handing over to Susanne, who is gonna moderate us through the Q&A session.
Yeah, thanks a lot to Dorota and Henriette for this excellent talk. So there was one question from Clive Wilson on the FDA breakfast posted in the Q&A, and he reminded us that the FDA breakfast actually is a test condition we use in clinical trials, and that this is more used in order to see if there's any dose dumping happening to the dosage form. So Dorota, maybe we can give a question to you. What do you think, in which conditions it is better to test real world conditions to really reflect what happens in older adult, and what should we use actually as real life conditions, also given the fact that maybe some people are very much used to eat burger for lunch or other things.
So thank you for the question. So many studies were also continental breakfast was used. So bread with some cheese, ham, and bread spread, and it actually seems to be quite real life situation. I would also add that it may be depends on the people place of living. So maybe in Germany people eat something different for their breakfast or lunch than people, let's say, in China or Japan. So in this case, there will be different real life situation. But this continental breakfast seems quite real life for me.
Thank you, Dorota. So we can basically mark this question as done. The second question from Andrew goes to Henriette. Is there any impact on the thickness versus the size? For example, a thinner tablet of larger diameter or oval shape. Would this be more preferred compared to a thicker 500 milligram tablet? This is the first part of the question.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So for the design of the tested tablets, we were looking on having the same ratio between length, width, and thickness within the same tablet shape. But then I think I can't completely comment on how the thickness would influence the swallowability within the same length of tablets, for example. But I think what is important when we talk about influences of shapes and sizes on the swallowability is that we also focus on that parameter, the minimum cross-sectional area, as it has already been reported previous in literature that dosage forms would tend to rotate kind of during the swallowing process and would take an orientation that provides the least resistance, let's say, and therefore when comparing between different tablet shapes, it would be most appropriate to compare them based on that minimum cross-sectional area rather than on the largest dimension. So I hope this answers at least a bit the question.
Yeah, and we can maybe follow up. The second question from Andrew is in the direction of, is there any alternative dosage form for these patient populations that they would prefer?
Yeah, that is a good question. So, I mean, there are alternative dosage forms. And as you saw, we tested mini tablets within 2 of the weight showcases. And I haven't presented that data today, but what we saw was that it seemed for adults and younger adults as a good alternative to larger sized monolithic tablets. And there are studies out there comparing alternative dosage forms with each other, so ODTs, mini tablets, and others. But I think there is also still a need in terms of comparison really between monolithic tablets and alternative dosage forms. Especially, as I said, within the context of polypharmacy, as normally the acceptability then of an alternative dosage form is more tested for this one type of dosage form, but then it has to be really seen in the context of polypharmacy if we talk about older adults.
Henriette, one more question related to the study participants in the study with respect to dentition of the older volunteers. Was this recorded, and how much is this impacting deglutition? And were all dosage forms film coded you have tested?
Yeah, so I will come to the last question first. So all tablets were film coded with the same PVA coding. As we said, we want to exclude any influence by varying surface characteristics, depending then on the size or shape of the individual tablets. And we did not record at the end the dental status of our participants, but what I can say related to this was that, as I was already talking about the mini tablets, that actually some older adults who were a bit more hesitant towards those mini tablets stated that they would be kind of afraid that some of those tablets could get stuck within their teeth, and they might not be able to feel them and be able to swallow then the whole dose.
Then thank you, Henriette. One very quick question to Dorota. How much water or liquid do people take in real life? Do they always take a full glass of water, as we assume?
Yes. So in the first part of my work, I performed the survey, and I asked people about it. And since it's a questionnaire, people it may affect their answer, but actually people mostly stated that they use like a glass of water, which actually shows that they may be adherent to this recommendation.
Okay. Then there's a further recommendation again from Clive, Dorota, to look more into meal diaries in different populations and also stratified by social grouping, as wealth affects health and outcomes. So what do you think about this recommendation?
Definitely, I think it's definitely true. Like wealth affects everything. Health, definitely. Thank you for this thought.
Okay, I think with this we are at the end of our webinar. I would like to thank all the participants and also our speakers. And